Live.
Hooray! All right, so this is the first ever, what I'm going to call Water Cooler Stories, and we have Dean Esmay with us. Hello, Dean.
Hey, the notorious Dean Esmay. Nice to see you. I'm gonna call you B. Beelzebub.
Yeah.
But I can't say all that, so we're just gonna call you B. Hey, B.
That works.
So what are we talking about?
So I figured maybe we could just talk about like what we were getting into on Twitter, actually. You and I had that little exchange there about that image that I had made.
Which one? I can't remember. I get people don't get this, but literally I get tweets all the time from so many people. I'm not being condescending. What was the image? Was one of the mean Jesus images or something?
No. Let me see if I can maybe screen share.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, go ahead and screen share that. I remember it now. I haven't even seen it yet, but I remember now.
Yeah, that was it, I think.
Yeah, let's have a look here. This is a real typical atheist meme. Oh, where'd it go?
Hold on. Screen sharing, presenting. Bring that up. There it is.
Yeah, okay. I wonder if there's a way to freeze it up there. I'll tell you what. I know how this works. It's read it out loud. I'll mute myself and you can read it out loud.
Okay, so the image that I came up with, it was really just kind of an idea that I had at one point, and it just sounded okay. And I do admit that in some ways it is a little bit vague. I actually had to go back and try and recorrect it, but I think it's still a bit vague. The first and second part are somewhat related to one another, but it was there are two types of people in this world: those who wish to believe and those who wish to know. Those who wish to believe have no interest in knowing anything more than what they've been told they're supposed to believe. Those who wish to know have no interest in believing even that which they've been told they're supposed to know. A religious mind can be scientific, and a scientific mind can be religious, but ultimately what truly differentiates the two, and will typically differentiate an atheist from a theist, is whether or not you hold anything at all to be above scrutiny. Now, yeah, that was what it was, and I do admit that it probably needs a bit more elaboration. What do you think, Dean? You there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't unmute. I thought I unmuted. Okay, yeah, okay. This seems like a real typical run-of-the-mill atheist meme. An argument and an assertion about theists that I've heard millions of times before. I track it back at best to the early 2000s when we had Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and those pumping out these notorious and, in my view, very shallow and very disingenuous ideas about religion that a whole group that I call the New Atheist Cultists, and I will stand by the characterization of cult, spreads these nasty things they say about religious people. And this, I can't even accuse you of being nasty at this point because I honestly think you believe this is true and that there's something insightful about this assertion. And from my point of view, as a highly educated theorist who's done a lot of study and reading, not just on science, but religion and all that, every word of that's bullshit. And in fact, what I find is the most dogmatic people I encounter anymore are all atheists. And good signs that, in my view, you're going to be a dogmatic atheist is you think there's something particularly insightful about the works of Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Seth MacFarlane, George Carlin, Bill Maher. These are shallow people who built careers basically poisoning people's minds about religion and religious people, even playing games with the language to make religion by definition something irrational, even though nobody would have accepted that definition historically, and it's still ludicrous. Most atheists I find now have a sentimental attachment to something they call science, and they don't even know what real science is or how it works. And instead, they lecture Christians in a very condescending and ignorant way about things like the Big Bang Theory, which a Christian gave you because of his Christian training, and or evolution, which for the vast majority of mainline organized Orthodox Christians, the kind that keep institutional bodies and educational institutions, none of them ever came up with creationism. They all thought it was stupid. Yet this creationist thing keeps getting flung at all the Christians as if we're the anti-science people. And all of it's garbage. Every word of it. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just letting you go on. I was just letting you
You
talk.
do certainly have your Ken Hams of the world who are closed-minded and dogmatic and crazy and simple-minded. Yes.
Oh, definitely.
And now, as the atheism community has finally come out and gotten really big, turns out y'all have just as many crazy fucks as we ever did. And so this entire
there are crazy nuts in every single group. That's a given.
That's
That's the
exactly
human
right.
condition.
That's exactly right. And so, as a very serious-minded theist, I'm not going to call out the men's rights movement in particular so much as just what I see. I remember when I came into the movement back around 2010, which was before the atheist schism, before the blow up with Rebecca Watson and just all that crap, right? There were a few atheists, and I met them. Like, oh, hey, they would introduce themselves as atheists, which always struck me as odd. Really, that's your big identifier yourself? Okay. It seemed odd, and I'm like, okay, but it doesn't matter as long as we got a shared goal. And then eventually, I noticed a ton of atheists, organized atheists, came in because of the skepticism, and they figured out the feminism was bullshit. What I started noticing is that the atheist tics of habit and thought and rhetoric and even talking points and even really being rude to religious people just because they thought it was funny, but doing it all the time and like they meant it, like that meme, because that meme is nonsense, I'm sorry. Pseudoscientific nonsense, not being mean. It's just...
Well, like I said, it was just something that I came up with. It was just a thought that I thought might be worth putting into a picture. Especially since it was something that was too long to put into one single tweet.
And what I see of that is this redefinition of religion that's become very popular that very few people would have accepted even back in the 90s. See, I'm 50, right? And so I have a memory. I grew up King James Bible Christian on my dad's side, Presbyterian Calvinist on my mom's side, was atheist for a very long time, hung out with a lot of atheists. And that whole idea that religion and science are in conflict, oh my God, I've watched it develop over 30 years. Nobody would have accepted it when I was a child, that there was any such conflict. Even my Bible thumper dad, King James Bible, never got past, the whole hardline rock rib Baptist thing. Even he told me when I was a kid that the creation science stuff sounded loopy to him. So, I was taught by some of this. I did spend a year in a Catholic high school in an honors class taught by monks, and oh my God, they were so smart. And I learned more about science in that 1 year of that Catholic school than anything I learned in 4 years at university. And so this fiction that we don't know how to question things, I find when I talk to atheists these days, and I'm not saying it's like every atheist, but holy cow, you just tell an atheist something is science and he'll fucking buy it because a scientist said so. And that just...
And personally though, Dean, I would disagree with that. To me, okay. I don't even consider an atheist to be an atheist if they hold atheism to be above scrutiny. To me, the fundamental thing about atheism is that you hold nothing above scrutiny, not a single thing in this world. If you don't, if you do hold anything to be above scrutiny, then you'll never get to the truth of anything.
All right. So that's what you should. What the main argument I would have for you on that, because see, this is probably also why people are reacting weird to me. Let me back it up and say a few things, because I want people to hear this. You are used to hearing from Christians who are Bible thumpers who go around trying to push Jesus at you. And what's weird about that is those are all what I would call unorganized Christians, evangelical Christians, the ones who say it's all about just believe in Jesus or burn, or just believe in Jesus and be saved, or don't believe in Jesus and be burned. And everybody doesn't seem to know that that's always been a minority sect of Christians, especially when you look at worldwide, more Orthodox Christians, including the organized Protestants. You know, I have criticisms of Protestantism, but the organized Lutherans, the organized Baptists, the ones who are keeping like an institutional body and accountability, those are the people who will also tell you, don't proselytize, don't push Jesus at people, don't push the Bible at people, let people, you know, you can let people know you're a Christian, and if they have questions, answer them as best you can, but it's not your job to convert people. And how we get into all that and the specifics of that, we can argue, because an evangelical will come along and quote this verse or that verse and say, yes, you're supposed to. Yeah, bullshit, nonsense. Not just the Catholics, but the Eastern Orthodox, the Presbyterians, the Lutherans, all these other Protestants would tell you, never knock people's doors, never be passing out, never be telling people they're going to go to hell if they don't become Catholic or whatever. Never be doing that. People hate it. And I've been taught that since the 70s by every branch of Christian I've ever met. So already the media portrayals of us, I'm not here to talk about Jesus. I mean, if you want to have a conversation about that, ask and we'll have it. I'm talking about rational ideas that everybody understood, a lot of people understood when I was a kid, that nobody seems to understand anymore. And that's one of the things that gets so upsetting about it, right? Because you're talking about a breed of Christian that is not most of us, that is demonstrably not most of us, provably not most of us. When you're talking about, for example, these creationists or the Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever who knock on your door. They're a fringe of a fringe. They're just the biggest loudmouths. So even when you're looking at somebody like Pat Robertson or Jerry Falwell or Ralph, Ralph Reed makes me want to cry. He's such an idiot, right? Sure, he is a Christian. But I do think that really the organized atheists, like, there have been really smart Christians trying to get through to people on this for a long time and being shut out. In fact, it feels like a lot like being an MRA. Because to get back to one of my points is, all right, you said anything's questionable. This includes your atheism then. Because...
Yes, of course.
And the thing is that the understanding of the word God in English is non-religion specific. And it is shocking nobody even will recognize that anymore, even though I can prove to you that was the universally understood term for God is not specific to the Christian religion. It is the same singular concept from religion to religion. Not every religion, but I will go ahead and arrogantly say all the most advanced religions have the same concept of God. And it looks exactly the opposite of what Richard Dawkins, for example, tries to pawn off in his weird backwards 747 argument in the God delusion. And some of the other stuff I've heard him say. The idea of God is not infinite complexity. The idea of God is infinite simplicity. It has been viewed for at least 2,500 years. This is including Aristotle, Plato, of course Thomas Aquinas, Jewish thinkers, Muslim thinkers, Bantu philosophers going back maybe as far as 10,000 years, pagans I've talked to who say they've got evidence going to some pagan ideas going back as maybe as much as 100,000 years. The idea of God is the thing that's making all reality go. Not the thing that started reality, the thing that's making it be here now. And that is in control of everything at all times. All of it. Including time. Including the laws of physics. Including things like math and geometry. These are not new or exotic ideas either. God is infinitely simple. God is what we call the contingent reality on which all other reality depends. All these religions came to the same grasped idea. The Zoroastrians got it. The Bantu philosophers got it. Socrates got it. Thomas Aquinas got it. I mean, the thing that's making the laws of physics go. I mean, some of the arguments we have now, I'm speechifying, and if at any point you say, Dean, you're shut up, right? I'll shut up. But you know, The idea, for example, that we're going to make the world, we're going to try and make our science fit an exact literal description of the book of Genesis. 1600 years, Augustine of Hippo said that would be a dumb thing to do. Because they already had conversations like this. If you read the ancients, they were not as stupid as people think. They had already thought of going forwards and backwards in time. They had already thought about the laws of physics maybe changing. They had already thought, did the universe begin or was it already always here? Could there be multiple dimensions? Could time move back? These aren't modern ideas. You can find that in Aristotle or Plato. And God was thought to be the thing making all this go, which meant it had to be infinite in all directions. It had to be infinitely powerful in all directions. It had to be incapable of motion and incapable of change, but instead be the agent which made all of the change in the universe possible. That it's live, that it's there all the fucking time. And we keep saying it's so powerful, not to brag about how powerful God is, but because that is the concept. The thing that controls 100% reality. Not a primitive idea. It's not Zeus. It's not Thor. It's been thought of by a lot of people and analyzed by a lot of people. That original word in Greek was theos, the theos that makes all reality go, that makes physics happen, that makes logic work. The theos is the root of our word for theology. Then I will hear modern kids say, theology is Harry Potter magic and mythology. It's like, okay, you just, wow, you just shit on some of the smartest thinkers who ever existed. Because atheism ultimately is an ideological position. And one of the things that's so hard listening to you guys is this constant drumbeat claim of, no, it's not, it's just a lack of belief. Get out of here. This is a binary choice. Is the universe ultimately causeless and has no ultimate cause to anything that's happening? It's just kind of randomly here because it is? Or is something driving things? And if so, is it intelligent or not? If you take the it doesn't exist or I think I'll act like it doesn't matter, you're an atheist. If you think it probably exists and probably matters, you're a theist. And from there, if you're a theist, you start thinking, well, what other properties might the God have? Because ultimately there can be only one, the ultimate source of everything. So there can only be one. If there's two, you got to figure out who made the two. You always get to the one. Most every philosophical group gets there. And Aristotle laid it out plainly as part of his study of physics, not because he felt he had to put it in there, but because he felt it necessary for there to be objectivity in the universe. There has to be something in the universe that never moves, that's making all the other motion happen. He figured logically that made the most sense. Thomas Aquinas took the same idea and said, yes, this all people call God. And he was consulting not just Aristotle, but Jewish and Muslim thinkers. This is 800 years ago. What I see consistently about the atheist community is they think they can be dicks to religious people. They think they can generalize about religious people, and they focus on the dumbest and most helpless. Like a 95 IQ grandma who just goes to church shouldn't have to explain to you why her instinct for the existence of God that she's had since a child is imagination, and she shouldn't have to explain anything to you. And so this whole dialectic of us, the religious, as the dangerous, irrational ones, it starts to look very superstitious and very uneducated. You know, and this isn't about bragging. This is my final. I'm just pouring out words at you. It's not fair. So I'll shut up at any point. But the thing is, I'll mention, as I've mentioned so many times, it was Father Georges Lemaitre studying Aristotle's concept of the prime mover, the same idea Aquinas called God, to see how might we use this concept to see where the universe might have come from. He called it the cosmic egg, but what he proposes it all came from a singularity and emerged out of there. He's the author of the Big Bang Theory. It's who he is. Contemplating God, contemplating the unmoved mover. Heisenberg was doing the same thing when he was first doing quantum mechanics. He was contemplating the prime mover because it made sense. And let me tell you why just contemplating this will be my last thought. Here's why contemplating the prime mover makes sense. If you throw it away and you posit a random causeless universe, nothing's driving anything, It just kind of all goes this way because it goes that way. The laws of physics and the laws of probability, they just do that because they do. That's your default atheist position. That's actually thought terminating right there, and you've cut away your imagination. And it makes you a reductionist thinker and probably less able to think of new theories in physics. There you go. There's my long rant.
Well, yeah, that was pretty long, but I didn't want to interrupt and be rude.
Yeah. So the thing is, the main thing is, I would keep saying is, the generalizations about religious people in their minds has to stop, or atheists are just going to have to put up with someone turning around and treating them that way. You know, oh, well, I'm just going to call you stupid and make fun of you and go after your motives and go after your mom and go after your this, that, or the other thing. I'm being mean, but then I turn around and tell everybody, yeah, I'm being mean, and I'm just shit posting, but I'm really not a mean guy, but there's so much atheist bullshit flying around that I've got a group of people now who are like taking training from me on how to debunk atheist bullshit, and a lot of them find it pretty easy, which is another thing that that community should be thinking about. It's not just mean people. There's an awful lot of simple-minded and not very educated thinking coming out of that community, and sometimes it's really annoying because when I get condescended to by somebody, you know, but go ahead.
Well, like I said, you get those kind of people in any kind of group, and that's what really what I was talking about there. To try and elaborate it, it isn't even necessarily atheist and theist. You just have people who prefer to take the easy route when it comes to thinking. To me, though, an atheist is supposed to be somebody who prefers to take the hard route, whereas typically see theism to be how would you put it?
God in the gaps. Get this, so we're gonna throw God in there. That's a Dawkinsism. Is that what you're thinking? Like, it's
sort of in a way, but it's especially when you say something like, "Well, God works in mysterious ways." It just seems like too easy of an explanation for anything.
Really?
Yeah, it just seems too easy when you can simply throw that out there. When anyone can throw out any kind of answer like that, it is the way it is because of so and so.
Right,
it's too easy an explanation. It's not looking into the things that really make the universe a truly unique and beautiful place that I think it is. But as an atheist, I think that the universe, like what you were talking about earlier, that it is what it is. It is the way it is. How did you say it?
It just goes that way. It just all goes that way because it does.
Yes, in some ways, I think that actually that is a bit more beautiful. That it is so simple that everything just kind of works the way it does, but there is still so much complexity to it, but yet still a lot of elegant simplicity. Like with Albert Einstein's relativity. I think it was either special or general relativity.
Mm-hmm.
One of the comments that somebody had made about it at some point, one of his peers had commented on it, saying it was elegantly simplistic. And when Einstein tried to change that formula to try and fit a static, stagnant universe that was unchanging and eternal, it made the equation clunky, overly complex than it needed to be to try and compensate for anything, to try and compensate for a lack of any kind of dynamic. But yet we don't see that in the world around us. Hubble showed that with showing that everything was moving away from everything else.
Mm-hmm. What's funny is, okay, you just two things. First off, you just kind of you sound like you'd get along with Spinoza's idea of God, which is more or less a pantheist view. You're just kind of accepting it, almost like you're accepting the intelligence of the universe is the universe itself. That's a classic kind of somewhere between deism and pantheism, if you accept that there's any intelligence involved in the whole thing. If you think it's all just kind of dumbly doing that, what I would say is that you wind up with several logical problems at once that you must simply assume to be true, that you cannot possibly prove to be true, which means you're taking a faithless position. And just by this actually seems to happen to atheist thinkers. I see it all the time. What you guys fall, and I'm an ex-atheist, right? So I'm kind of, I know it's unsettling, right? I'm talking about you guys as an identifiable you, but I do that because you guys talk about the religious so generally so much. Time for you to guys be on the back foot. What the atheist almost always gets to is accepting the idea of a random causeless universe. He gets there one way or the other. And he accepts what I would call the thought-terminating cliche, it all just goes that way because it does. So we can stop thinking now.
See, that I would disagree with.
Because
it doesn't mean that we have to stop thinking about it. It just means there's how would you put it? It doesn't mean we have to stop thinking about it. It just means that there's still stuff that needs to be discovered.
Right, and the supposed
there's mechanics to the universe that we still don't understand, though.
The supposed fear that we hear advanced from the atheist is that if we let religious thought peek in here, or even let the religion get anywhere near that, we will start accepting that God magically does everything we can't see, or we can't understand, and so that terminates thought. The proper theist response is, first off, everybody's not meant to be a scientist, so people who do just accept simple ideas aren't necessarily wrong. But second, no, you really are closing off avenues of thought the minute you take your random causeless universe and accept the premise. And you either accept it as a really serious premise and think it through, or you accept it in a kind of a, yeah, I just kind of think it works that way, so I assume I can exclude other observations. From the theist's point of view, who's thought these things through, what you almost always wind up being, and I was like this too, so I can even declare it was how I was. Your mind starts narrowing, it really does, and you start thinking that everything is in the material universe, and so that you must, by the laws of physics and what is currently known of things like electromagnetism and quantum mechanics and, you know, the laws of thermodynamics and all those things, you must accept that that is all there is. That's the default materialist view, and you almost always wind up going that way. Most of you do. And if you don't wind up really super obsessive on science, you wind up super obsessive on some kind of fringe politics like objectivism or Marxism or feminism or one of those, because you've accepted that human nature can be steered by social planning or whatever scheme you've come up with, because you've decided you are neutral on the God question. But as soon as you are neutral on the God question, you are definitionally really not neutral. You're throwing out the idea of objectivity. And so you're doing, I mean, you could even argue this started with Kant and Pascal, but you're throwing out objectivity as a possibility. And so suddenly, all of a sudden, you start reducing, and all you know is variations on what you already know. From my perspective, as a non-materialist, as a theist, I immediately notice things about the universe, such as that there are clearly, undisputably, to my mind, to the rational evidence, that there are forces in the universe that are not working at all within the laws of physics. And that don't obey them.
Like black holes and shit.
Well, see, you're ahead you just jumped there because you're still within the physical universe. You're about how gravity and mass interact to create a singularity and shit. Okay, no. Find me the empirical evidence in the universe for why logic works at all. Find me the physical evidence.
Say again. I'm
you know what? I should
have a hard time getting you, Dean. I don't know if I'm having a bad internet connection or something, but you're kind of cutting in and out.
Oh no. Sorry. Okay, wait a minute. I was pacing. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it seems
okay,
like
hopefully so.
Pretty steady.
From the non-materialist position, from the position of what you might call the supernatural, what I observe and it ain't just me and it ain't just Christians, is that it appears there are all kinds of forces we all believe in that clearly don't operate within the laws of physics. And one of them is logic, by which I mean logic itself. Why logic? Why does logic work? What's making logic work? You can either take the materialist view of it's all in the universe and the universe kind of does that, therefore it's an emergent property of the way things just are, or you can go, oh, no, something external to all this is driving that and making that work that way. Something external is making the laws of physics go, and that explains why the laws of physics don't just randomly fluctuate. Something's holding them steady. Or is setting the rules by which they behave. That's the idea of the prime mover. The ultimate idea of the prime mover is that all reality is observable as motion. You were just talking about Einstein there. I've read Einstein. Einstein's brilliant. I get general relativity. I have a harder time with special relativity, but I've read Einstein's own explanations. And he's so right. It's so simple. It's ridiculous. Once you make over this massive hump of boom, I get it, right? It seems crazy until you get it. He's accepting the completely relativistic universe, but underneath it is what Aquinas and Aristotle had observed way before, which is that all reality appears to be motion. If it's not moving, it's not real. And yes, by the way, Aristotle, the ancients already knew everything moved, including the earth and rocks and all that. The ancient Greeks knew that. He reasoned everything had to move, and he even reasoned, Aristotle reasoned 400 years before Jesus, had no Bibles, reasoned that the universe had to ultimately be made up of some ultimately tiny fragment that he called the atom. When physicists found the atom, they were looking for Aristotle's atom. And they found it. So again, this to me just points to what are we as moderns thinking, that we're so this tale that people were primitive and they just thought lightning meant Thor did it. No, give me a break. There have been some really bright thinkers who thought this shit through. They already knew. Christian, Muslim, and other philosophers who knew about the prime mover was like, yeah, no, the lightning is probably a physical effect. God is probably not coming down and doing that. We don't know everything about it, but it's part of the universe. In fact, that's an observation others have made. If you take the Christian monotheist idea, you also assume that something outside the universe and penetrating the universe is controlling everything in the universe. That means nothing in the universe is God, which means nothing is forbidden to experiment on and look at and try and figure out. Unless it's some, sacred relic or something, don't ruin it, right? But otherwise, that monotheist idea is advanced because now we know we don't worship the sun. We don't worship dead bodies. We don't worship cows. We can eat what we want. We can dissect what we want, because none of it's God. And Western science grew up around this milieu, whereas now the tale we supposedly hear is all these bright scientists were running in fear because they would, contradict the theologians. Dude, it's mythology. It's the same type of mythology as women were always oppressed by their men. It's garbage, okay? People used to be mean to theists or atheists or not trust them, but, the idea that nobody... No, I'm sorry, the narrative is just wrong. We've been doing science, Christians and other religions have been doing science, not fighting religion, but because religious ideas were driving inspiration for a lot of specific, and philosophical ideas were driving inspiration. From my perspective, believing there are forces that work outside the laws of physics makes it much easier for me to consider new ideas and new theories about how things work within physics. I mean, really, has nobody ever hit you with that? Why don't the laws of physics just randomly change? And if your only answer is because they just don't, you stop thinking. And I sit there and think, well, why doesn't God let the laws of physics change? Maybe he does. Maybe I should start finding out if they change. And you know what? There is evidence that they do that physicists don't talk about because they're afraid to sound crazy. But we've been finding out, for example, the last few years, more and more areas where the speed of light changes. I can look and show you a thing or two that there's evidence that the speed of light actually constantly fluctuates at all times. There's evidence of that,
Oh
but
yeah,
they're looking for it. You know?
that's one thing people don't seem to actually quite realize. The speed of light isn't actually a constant. I mean, there's an upper physical limit to how fast something can go, 3 × 10⁸ meters per second. I mean, that's as fast as it can go. Nothing, you can't physically move through space that fast. However, there is that interesting. I remember seeing, I think it was something on TV at one point, but it's what they were discussing with like warp drives, that you can actually fold and expand space up to an upper limit of 10 times the speed of light, which sounds incredibly fast. But when you start to realize that that is your new speed limit for moving through the universe, you start to realize that getting to the next, star system is going to take a long time. Even just,
Even if,
one
even
that's
if it's
25 light years away. That's going to take over 2.5 years for you to get there.
yeah, that's assuming you can get to that speed too.
Yeah.
Because if you could tell me how you can transition to that speed in a few seconds and not kill everybody, that'd be an interesting trick too, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, the thing is with that whole thing is, as I understand it, you have the warp bubble that's around the spaceship, and the spaceship isn't actually moving relative to its relative to the space around it. The spaceship and the space around it are moving inside the bubble. And the bubble is creating a folding of space in front of the ship, collapsing it, and then moving it around to the back, and then expanding it. So the spaceship, it sounds insane, I know.
Well,
But
that's
effectively, the ship is crossing, tens of thousands of light years without actually moving.
and it's cool. Although you're I see what you're saying. Yes. Okay. So yes, in fact, there's an old word for that predates the 20th century, as far as I know. That, by the way, theist philosophers advanced, was called the tesseract. You can go look it up. Tesseract. It's an old idea in philosophy, and you know what it is? Folding space so that you can cross vast amounts of distance and then letting it unfold. Stuff like that was described before the 20th century by even non-scientists, by just philosophers. And I make that point again to just go back to, we think this is a new idea. What actually physicists are usually doing with this kind of stuff, like warp drives or hyperspace, is they really are thinking about stuff that philosophers and other thinkers came up with first, usually long before they were born. And then what I notice they keep doing is saying, this is a neat new idea. What you just described is a tesseract. What you just described was also what they were describing as warp drives, more or less, in Star Trek days in the 70s. Except you just did the full on. You're like, fold this whole bit of space and just kind of barely move. Well, you said not move at all. I was going to say, move 1 foot and you just cross 10,000 light years. That's kind of a tesseract. What you're saying isn't that weird? Isn't that different? Is all I'm saying there.
It is some slight differences, I think, but to me, though, when I hear the word tesseract, obviously one can think of movie Thor or something, but as far as geometry is concerned, a tesseract, as far as I know, is a four-sided or four-dimensional cube. Excuse me, a hypercube.
Maybe the usage has changed, or I've grabbed the wrong word. I remember the first time I read about it, it was in Madeleine L'Engle's book, A Wrinkle in Time, which I think she published in the 60s. It's great science fiction, fantasy kids book. Fabulous. Very Christian, too. But she was talking about the tesseract in that. Go ahead and look it up. And there may be more than one usage. But it really was described, and I've looked it up. I thought it was the tesseract. It really was about folding space, so you could just In fact, I remember Madeleine L'Engle explaining it like she's like, imagine the universe as a tablecloth. Imagine you bunch the tablecloth up, and the ant walks, an inch, and then you fold it up, and the ant has just crossed the whole table. And that's what she was describing.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's because Madeleine L'Engle invented the idea. I'm just pointing it out. It's surprising. People think, oh, these are new ideas. They're like,
It's an interesting idea, but it sounds maybe like it would be more akin to
a little more like these traditional
wormhole, or
maybe
wormhole or Einstein-Rosen bridge. But here, this is. I'll screen share it. This is. Can you see this?
No, I'm going to mute. Oh, they are saying a four-dimensional cube. Okay, maybe I picked the wrong word, or
Yeah, tesseract. It's a four-dimensional
hypercube. Yeah, it's a 4D
cube,
cube.
hypercube.
Oh,
You can
sure.
see over
That's
here.
actually
Yeah.
a more advanced to take on the idea, because we're assuming an extra dimension.
Well, it
It's
goes
not
even.
normal even.
Yeah, because you normally in three-dimensional space you have your x axis, y axis, and z axis, and this adds another one in there. This, if you can see the mouse right here, it's this one right here connecting this inner cube to the outer one. Now you can go up to. Let's see, yeah, I've actually looked this up before, if I remember right. Hypercubes. You can not only go up to a four-dimensional hypercube, you can go all the way up to friggin' 12-dimensional hypercubes, 10 cubes, a decaract,
Sure, that's when we
pentaract,
get into it.
octaract, heptaract.
I'm sure this.
Like, here's some pretty looking things. But yeah, that's a orthographic projection of some of these hypercubes.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, my mute button is weird, and I can never tell if it's on or off. Yeah, I imagine the string theorists are particularly in love with these. They've probably already been there playing with those. By the way, I'm officially a big critic, a big skeptic of string theory. I think they're never going to produce anything because they're full of shit. But hey, prove me wrong, boys. Go for it. I mean, because that's my attitude.
Can you see this right here, over here?
Yeah,
that's something that's just a bit mind warping right there.
It sure is. Well, you're trying to imagine 12 dimensions by showing it on 2 dimensions. There's a really neat book that helps people who are interested in these concepts, especially if they're younger or they're new to them. Have you ever read a book called Flatland?
No, not that I can.
It would actually, if anybody's looking into like wanting to know about string theory, this is not about string theory, but it's like conceptually when it seems weird to you, a book that goes the other way can help you. It's just called Flatland, A Romance of Many Dimensions. Flatland, a romance, first published in 1884. But everything of it is right. It's a cool introduction if you want to get into history and science and all this stuff, and it will make it made the string theorists look less weird to me when I read it. He wrote it in 1884, and the idea of Flatland is very simple. He conceived of a dimension or a world which had only 2 dimensions. So you had a world that just flat as a piece of paper. It truly only has 2 dimensions, and he invented intelligent creatures who lived in the 2-dimensional universe, and using perfectly good math and good illustrations explained what life would look like to the 2-dimensional person, including the fact that they would have to actually have a little bit of a 3rd dimension to be able to perceive anything, but they wouldn't be able to perceive the existence of it. But if one of us stepped into the world, huh?
I just wanted to ask a quick question. Are you a fan of Doctor Who at all?
Oh, dude.
Did you?
I'm old, right? I'm 50, right?
I'm only 25, man. I'm half your age.
20. I know. It's you sick. I blame you for that, you bastard. How dare you be 25 years younger than me? Get the fuck out when you're older. No.
Yeah. There was an episode recently. They did it with I think it was Peter Capaldi in the newest seasons of Doctor Who. They actually had 2-dimensional creatures from another dimension or something come through and it start to exist in a 3-dimensional plane. It was a freaky episode. If you haven't seen it, you should really go and watch it. People are being turned from 2-dimensional things into 3-dimensional things and back again. It's trippy.
I'm actually just stunned only because I didn't get to finish my sentence. I am so old. I watched Tom Baker when he was on TV in the 70s, and I've been a fan ever since. I've watched every Peter Capaldi episode that I'm aware of. His second season was much better than the first season of Peter Capaldi. I don't remember this. Has there been a? Did I miss an episode? Have I forgotten it? Has the third season aired
You
and I missed it?
you might have missed an episode. I don't know if they've come out with a third season or anything.
I don't
Um,
remember. I would have remembered this because I've always been charmed by the whole idea of the two-dimensional creatures. I love that little book. It's meant for science nerds, right? So it's. I mean, it's the tale of the
mm,
two-dimensional man talking to the three-dimensional man, and it's cute and it's easy to understand. But his math's solid, his illustrations are solid, and I would have keyed on that. So if you can remember which episode that was, I need to somehow find it. Because
I,
once you get the idea that there could be a universe of
hmm.
only two dimensions, and that two-dimensional creatures wouldn't have a very good way of seeing three dimensions, they would only grasp it as in a certain intellectual way. And then he does go on to point out, oh, by the way, if there are 4, 5, 6, 7, or more dimensions that we don't know of, we would feel like Flat Man. So again, he was making that point before the modern string theorists were. That you wouldn't be able to do it. And that goes back to my running theme of what I call the great forgetting, that people have always been wicked smart, and including religious or non, there's always been atheists or I don't cares around. Um, you have certain specific or regrettable episodes in history, but they're usually more complex than you hear about, or people aren't being entirely fair because they're not comparing against what non-religious stupid people have done. So they act like, yeah, religion's this terminating cliche. No, it isn't. Read Thomas Aquinas and tell me that was a stupid man. Holy shit! I wish I were that bright. Aristotle, Plato, and people think, no, we're more advanced now. No, people were talking about infinite. They were talking about other universes and multiple dimensions thousands of years ago, contemplating it all. The only thing physicists literally, whenever I look and listen to physicists or cosmologists, they are always talking about ideas I heard first from a Greek philosopher. Always. Even except when you get into quantum mechanics, because nobody gets quantum mechanics, right? But even there, the basics are all there. The assumption is that all reality moves at all times, which also implies that if motion stops, reality stops. So what's making it all move? That's the prime mover question. And so just the idea that it's thought terminating is just wrong. It's thought terminating for your 100 IQ or 90 IQ cousin, who the best he's going to ever do is he's going to be a mechanic. He's going to read his Bible, and somebody's going to talk him into thinking the Earth is 6,000 years old. So fucking what? Name me scientific ideas people used to believe that are just total garbage. It doesn't make the difference to the average person's life. If you start talking to smart theists, these become great conversations where they can. As long as you don't assume. So there you go. There's the source of all my ranting. We can keep talking. I love talking about physics, and I love talking about Doctor Who. Can I tell you a Doctor Who story?
Sure. I was just trying to find the freaking stinking thing here on BBC, but of course the BBC's got to be stupid.
Yeah, this just
Trying
doesn't.
to see it, pick up the episodes.
Here's a funny story nobody knows. I'll just keep talking while you're looking for anybody who's listening. You can half listen. I had a very brief stint as a Huffington Post UK blogger until they discovered I was an MRA. And then they threw me off, right? And they threw me off for being friendly with Aaron Pitsey. That actually happened. These are just MRA stories, right? But I wrote I wrote an article for Huffington Post UK addressed to Stephen Moffat at the end of season 1 of Peter Capaldi, saying what I thought would improve season 2. And that's still up on Huffington Post UK, last I looked, the Doctor Who thing I wrote. Huffington Post UK. I don't think they took it down, even though they nuked mine because it was a popular article. And in the second season, they pretty much took all my suggestions, which is kind of funny because I'm not saying that I know that Stephen Moffat personally read it, but I had a lot of suggestions, and I think they were congruent with what a lot of other people thought. And so I used to be on I used to brag to all my friends that Stephen Moffat just listens to all me, because I explained to everybody what I thought, and I wrote this column. And then the next year they had done all of it. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. You don't have to believe me, but you can go look for it. My biggest issue with Peter Capaldi in that first season is he didn't seem to have any identity. Well,
I don't think any of them really do. It's trying to fit into the role of the Doctor is some pretty damn big shoes. So
I see. Here's the thing. Unlike a lot of Americans, but a lot of Brits, I already knew Peter Capaldi from a previous TV series, so I knew what his acting talent is, and Capaldi is one of those guys who's giant and titanic as an actor when he's 3 inches from your face, and when he's in the more broad, exaggerated big shots that Matt Smith was so good at because he was gangly and stuff, he just looks like a wizened old man. And so what Capaldi needed, in my opinion, was much closer up, more intimate stories developed around character development. Hell, maybe even play up his age rather than playing it down. And they did all of that in the second season. I was so proud. No, I'm a major Whovian, man. I've been a Whovian since before you were born. I'm such a nerd, yeah.
All right, what was... I'm having trouble finding this damn thing.
I actually... normally, I would just be like buying it and saying, you must be right, but I am such a who nut. I'm going to call you... You're probably thinking of some other show. Because, like,
it
I'm
was
a total who nut. Okay.
No, I remember seeing it.
Got this episode or missed it, so I really want to know, yeah. I'm just going to call I don't believe you. Prove it to me. Prove your extraordinary claim. Prove it.
Hold on.
I'm teasing you. You don't have to. Or you can look it up later. Doesn't matter.
No, because now it's bugging me.
Now it's a thing, right. I know. Now it's a thing. I get you. My wife understands this about me. As soon as, like, I need to know if this is true, it's like, fine, go to Wikipedia. Don't go to Wikipedia. They suck. Now you're just going to make me get on and say, Doctor Who Flatland. See if that comes out. Doctor Who, Doctor... No.
Here we go. I think the episode was called Flatline.
Flatline.
And it was the 9th episode of the 8th
Holy
series.
Cow! I hate you. I remember the episode now. Bang! I looked at one picture. Right, the chalk creatures.
Yeah, those weird things.
Now I totally got it. Yeah.
You can see what I'm talking about.
Yes, the two-dimensional creatures come out. Yeah. Flatland does it more realistic, right? Because the Flatlanders can't perceive the third dimension. But yeah. In Flatland, they can't perceive the third dimension just like we can't perceive a fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh or eighth, which is the point he's making. And so, like, when we appear to the Flatlander, we can really sort of look more like sort of a cylinder that just kind of appears, a point that balloons into a cylinder and then closes back up, and that's it, and...
Yeah, you saw the episode. There was... it sounds like there was some little... What is it? Suggestions in there to that? Little hints, little homages to that?
Yeah. It was a good... I can't believe you punked me, man. I was going to swear, no, he saw some other British... See, now I remember the episode. Now I totally...
No! I like Doctor Who too much to forget it.
Smoked by a 25-year-old. I will be sneaking into your bed and burning you with a stake. I'll need you to hold still for that. Atheist bastard.
That was definitely an interesting episode.
It was a great episode. Stephen Moffat has... there are people who don't like him. Stephen Moffat has been brilliant. He's not only good at playing with interesting ideas that he's obviously gotten not just from quantum physics, but he's probably read a lot of the same old nerd books I have. He's only a little bit older than me. I think he's like 55. Maybe he's 50 even. Maybe he's my age. I don't know. We're pretty close, right? I know we read a lot of the stuff and we watched a lot of the same stuff. It's why I like him, because his brain kind of works a little like mine. Um, his use of those 2D creatures is very clever. Haven't seen that on TV. Have read it. Haven't seen it on TV. His idea of the Weeping Angels has to be
God, I hate the fucking Weeping Angels.
that has to be the most clever idea for a monster like ever. I actually think he may have done something there that no one in mythology ever did. Maybe they did, right? But we all know the Gorgon who freezes you, but the scary monster who freezes if you look at it, that's really scary.
Oh yeah, the you're that's a reference to Medusa there, right?
Well, it's a well, I'm saying, yeah, usually
The
any
Gorgon Medusa.
yeah, usually any idea you see in science fiction, honestly, is somewhere in mythology. It's really rare to have what you would call an original idea. It's usually more of a take on somebody else's idea, right? Like
so much stuff has been done before that there aren't any new ideas in the universe. Everything's been done. People keep saying.
Well, and it's not true, but it requires more creative thinking, and that just basically I see that and I go, he turned the Gorgon upside down. He just took the concept of the Gorgon on its head, which if you first heard it, you would go, that sounds dumb, because all you got to do is look at it and you're safe, and then all he had to do is one more thing. Oh, they're super fast and they want to kill you. And if you look away, they get to move. Oh!
Yeah. You blink.
Yeah,
whatever you do, don't blink. Blink, and you're dead. Yeah, try standing there and not blinking. Surely you've tried as a little kid to outbeat somebody at a freaking staring contest. Your eyes are going to hurt after enough time, and then you blink, and then it's going to kill you.
Yeah. That I don't think. We've seen every variation on a dragon, and every variation on a ghost, and every variation on a werewolf. I got seen nowhere anywhere.
What I think was the creepiest thing about the Weeping Angels too is not just the Weeping Angels. The fact that any image of a Weeping Angel becomes itself a Weeping Angel. Like if you remember the one episode with Matt Smith, they're all in this big cavern somewhere, and they're surrounded by them, but they don't know it because the Weeping Angels are so malnourished. They're actually starting to decay as statues. But there was one Weeping Angel which was being transported above on a spaceship somewhere, and
yeah, I remember this one. This is one of Amy's later episodes.
Yeah, I think that had Amy in it. Yeah.
I loved Amy.
Was it Amy or was it Clara?
I'm pretty sure it was Amy. It's trapped in the spaceship, and the way it's coming through.
The angel starts to come through the thing.
That's a funny one too, because they had the church in there with the bishop and the priest soldiers. I thought that was clever too. That same episode, if you look, it's either the Anglican or the Catholic Church they're making fun of in that episode, because all the soldiers are priests and like the general's a bishop. And the doctor even looks at him at one point and says, it's a very interesting role for a bishop, and he says, church has evolved a lot. It was a very funny line.
Yeah.
Because this is somewhere 1,000 years into the future or whatever, and they're priests and soldiers from the church. It's still cool. That's the kind of thing a religious person should not laugh at, should enjoy. That's just neat, even though it's kind of negative, but it's still funny. The thing I know,
the Church of the Papal Mainframe.
And if you're a real Stephen Moffat fan, see, the thing is, the idea of a papal mainframe isn't even that weird. There's a papal observatory still running and still doing professional astronomy work. It's in Arizona. It's run by Jesuits. Not kidding. It's a major observatory. Vatican
in Arizona?
Vatican Observatory is currently run in Arizona by Jesuits, out by Tempe.
I might have to take a drive out there sometime. I live in Arizona.
I totally recommend it. I would go if I could. People don't know it's there, but there's public tours. It's run entirely by Jesuit monks. And it's a real working, and it's not we're going to be funny 1900s astronomy. No. they're a really completely respected observatory in the world of astronomy, turning in real
I don't
peer-reviewed
doubt
work.
it.
Yeah, yeah, and they're, if you ever meet your first Jesuit, they're so cool because you can't get to be a Jesuit unless you're super smart. Yeah, there's a dumb Jesuit, like the only dumb Jesuit who ever existed took a head blow, you know, because they're really smart. Um, uh, and I don't know, remember what got that on me. Oh, we're just talking about priests and interesting things. Stephen Moffat.
Yeah, we got a bit sidetracked, I think.
That's okay. I'm going to make one more thing. Stephen Moffat is also the one who's He wasn't the director, but or the producer at the time, but he was one of the writers. He's the one who's responsible for "Are You My Mummy?"
Oh God!
The kid in the gas mask. Are
The
you my
gas mask
mummy?
kids. Are you my
Mummy.
mummy?
Go back and look.
Mummy.
He wrote that. That's his monster.
God,
Yeah, yeah. He knows how to think creepy. I love stuff. You know, I think.
that was so creepy.
Are you my mummy? Ah! Mummy.
Yeah. Don't leave me, mummy.
So listen, dude.
No,
Actually,
I'm gonna take a freaking 12 gauge to your face. Sorry.
I tell you what. I'm getting tired, and you ran it and I ran it, but I think maybe you've even figured out now. The I'm doing on Twitter is 90% act. Although I'm making real strong points, I'm just being TJ as a theist. I'm just being a dick to be a dick. Out of the theory that you hear from so many of these atheist thinkers, yeah, confront the believers on what they think and make them prove their shit and be an asshole and who cares who's offended. I'm like, all right, your turn. And I'm really not that mad. Sometimes people piss me off.
Well, honestly, I think
I am doing comedy, and it's comedy meant to make people think. It really, really is. And who gets really butthurt and versus who says, "Hey, I want to have a chat," it's always very interesting.
Yeah, I always think, well, even with as much as you like what you said, that atheists will demand evidence. I think it's just good for anyone and everyone to do that.
All right, but
because it's the entire world is a meritocracy. The universe is itself a meritocracy. It's a put up or shut up system.
it
You know what I
is.
mean?
Well, yeah, but and you know what? I'll send
You don't get anywhere in life by doing nothing.
That's true. Of course. Of course.
So,
in fact, just like I just said, reality is motion. If you're not moving, if you're not changing, you're not existing. That's a more philosophical joke, but there's some real truth to it.
yeah.
If you actually contemplate reality at a real deep level, everything's moving 100% of the time. That's in your relativist universe assumptions. That goes at least back to Aristotle. Everything's moving all the time. Nothing ever stops moving. What's making it all move? That's the prime mover question. And really smart scientists, thought that for a really long time. And from where I'm at, as soon as you just go, it all just goes that way. That's because you've dived into what I call the materialist view. You think everything's found in the physical universe, and therefore you're just going to bluntly assume everything is going to have somehow fit within the laws of physics. And there you've gone, and what you've done is you've jumped over the question, like, why are intelligible and predictable laws of physics even there, and what's keeping them enforced? Why does math work? It seems to work outside the laws of physics. Why does geometry work? It seems to work outside the laws of physics. There's copious evidence.
Some of that I would disagree with, really.
Well, it's the difference between the materialist and the non-materialist view. Because if you accept that it's all within the materialist universe, you've actually just scrunched it in and made an assumption. And it's the common assumption atheists wind up with. It's why I keep saying you guys thinking really is predictable. Once I key in on the fact that most of you are materialists and most of you are philosophical materialists, I'm giving this door away. I can just play with your mind all day with questions you can't answer because you accept the materialist assumption. And I can get you to say probably 10 times in a row, I don't know, it just goes that way as your answer to something. And that's usually my key in on, wait a minute, who's the closed-minded one? When you take your causeless universe assumption, it goes more to your ethical thoughts or whatever. Or your moral thoughts or whatever. It goes into your whole assumption about how the universe even works physically. When you accept that godless proposition, yeah.
I'm sorry, but we're probably going to have to wrap it up sometime soon here. It's going to be about 4 o'clock here. I'm
I
probably going to get
apologize. Was
interrupted
I
by
annoying you?
people.
Was I annoying you?
No,
I'm sorry.
no, it's all right. I mean, other people are going to be coming around, so I mean,
No,
uh,
not a problem. Like I was just
I
saying, I
don't.
was
Yeah,
tired.
I don't live by myself, so
I
I had
completely
to schedule
understand.
it around between when I would be here by myself.
Hey, you sat and
But
listened. You sat and listened, and you let yourself be picked on a little bit. That's really cool.
I don't have a
Uh,
problem with that. I mean, dude, I was in the military. I can take it and I can dish it out.
that's what I really want to see. I'll send you a video or two, or a link or two, just to check out. I think you'll find it interesting. Okay, man.
All right, like I said, we're just gonna have to wrap it up here pretty quick. Some people are gonna be
Yep.
coming home soon.
Let's wrap it.
Um, so if you want to see or hear any more of what Dean has to say, go ahead and check out his channel. Uh,
Check me out on
I don't.
Twitter. Check me out on Twitter at Dean Esmay. Yes, I'm being provocative and mean. I'm doing it on purpose. But anyway, go ahead.
Um, I know I don't have much shit on my channel right now, but I'm trying to get there. Just trying to find the time to do it all can be so time consuming to do any of these videos.
I understand.
Um,
And if anybody wants to do, if you want to do it again, or anybody listening wants to do it, let me know. I just don't do big fights. If you want to fight and debate me, no. But anyone, and if you want to do it again,
yeah,
Pete, let me know. If you want to let me go, let's do it again anytime.
yeah, I'd like to do this again sometime. It's always interesting to have any guests on. I mean, right now though we've got 0 viewers, so I mean it's just you and me. Like I said, I wasn't going to announce this at all or anything.
Well, I'm gonna
I
upload
have
it.
no freaking subscribers on my channel.
I'm gonna
I mean,
tweet it
come on,
out.
I'm an internet nobody.
It doesn't matter. I'll tweet it out, and I'm gonna grab a copy for my own. Is it okay if I do that? I just know let people.
Yeah,
See it.
go right ahead.
I think these are interesting conversations, and more of them are needed. They really are.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, don't be a stranger, man. I'd like to have another talk with you sometime.
Excellent. Take care of yourself, Bates. Say bye, everybody.
See you later.